It's just not that hard to make. Let me show you how to do it. Howdy, welcome to my kitchen. Hey, today we're gonna do an easy weeknight meal. This, yeah, I know, a lot of ingredients, right? It doesn't look that easy. No, trust me. It's simple, it's basic, and it's delicious. This is pizza. It's not hard to make. I'm gonna teach you how to make your own dough. We're going to make our own sauce, and assembly isn't that tough. So it's just a matter of grabbing the ingredients and going at it. And the ingredients on this, with the exception of just a few items, are all pretty much basic pantry items. So come on over, let's take a look at this, and we'll get into all of these wonderful ingredients and get started with the dough. It needs a little bit of time to sit around and do what it does. I'll explain that. Oh, before we get into this, look down below here in my description box. That's where a link to my website is. That's S.A.Trotter.com. That's where I have recipes. That's where I have merchandise for Texas Cooking Today and a lot of other stuff there. So take a look. That's pretty cool. I appreciate you doing that. Now, come over. Let's get started. Come on. The ingredients that I have for pizza, folks, it starts with the dough. Flour, water, yeast, salt, and just a little bit of olive oil. Doesn't take much. Very basic dough right there. Our sauce, well, that usually begins with tomatoes, and in this case it's a tomato paste. We're going to rehydrate it. We're going to add to it just a little bit of some wine. Now this can be omitted if you want. If you want, just go with plain water. We're going to be using some oregano, basil, black pepper, salt in that sauce. And that is such an easy, quick make. You're going to be shocked at how simple it really is. Our toppings, that's easy. I got some mozzarella and I got some Parmesan to top it with, and I got some pepperoni there. Now, also, if you want, you can do like a hamburger topping, but make sure you cook hamburger meat or chicken or anything like that before you top your pizza. Same way with bacon. Any of the toppings that you see that are offered at any pizzeria work really well. Avoid certain soft things like on the cheese. You don't want fresh mozzarella. It's too wet for a good quality pizza. Even, you know, the best pizzerias I've gone to where they used fresh mozzarella, it didn't work as well as using block. Okay, I think I've got everything set up just right here. Now, I'm about to make my dough. I'm going to use a mixer. Folks, don't make this too hard, all right? Now, if you got a mixer, use it, all right? But if you don't, this isn't hard to mix. Put everything in a bowl, your water, your yeast, salt, and the flour all in a bowl, and then just start mixing them by hand. And if you want, add a little olive oil to that. Once you're finished, just let the dough sit there and rise. Cover it and let it rise. I recommend keeping it in glass. Now, come on over. Let's look in the bowl here. Let's get started. All right, let's get that thing up. Now, I've got a whisk here. I'll show you what I want to do with that right now. Yeast and salt don't like each other, okay? Salt will kill yeast if there's too much of it, so I don't put it directly against the yeast when I put yeast into something like this. That's how I do those. No more combining than that is necessary. From here, it's a matter of get my dough hook, put it on there. I want just a little bit of olive oil, not a whole lot, not even a tablespoon. That's about 2 teaspoons. All right, now lock my mixer and just let it go at it. All right, well, that is coming done. It has gotten kind of smooth and slick. Looks really nice. Okay, here's the thing. This just needs some time. It needs time to do a couple of things. It needs to autolyze and it needs to rise a little bit. The autolyzing is really more important than the rising, and the yeast is mostly there for flavor. All right, and it does make a difference, folks. Now, let me tell you something about rising and what to do it in. All right, let me get a piece of paper towel here. I'm going to put just a little bit of oil in there. It doesn't have to be much. And I'm going to go around it just a little bit so it's spread around. Now, here's the thing. Glass, metal, what? When you rise dough, it's best to rise it in glass, and here's why. Remember how I told you that yeast doesn't get along with salt because the salt kills it if there's too much? Well, yeast doesn't get along with metal either. Now, even though we mixed it in a metal bowl, that isn't so important relative to where you rise it. If you rise it in a metal bowl, it messes with the rising on the bottom of the dough. But if you use glass, it does not. And I'll show you what I mean in a little bit. We'll take a look at that underneath. But right now, it just needs to hang out and be its little dough self. So, now the other thing, I recommend covering it. I just do that, okay? Yeah. Now I need to give this time, I want to give it about an hour, and that will give me plenty of time to take care of everything else. So this would be the time, like if you needed to make your sauce, shred your cheese, that kind of stuff, and let your dough do its own thing. Now, sauce time, come on over. Now folks, when it comes time to what pan to use, now you see these that I've got here, understand something. I was making pizzas for decades before I ever bought a pizza pan. I always made it on just a flat sheet pan like you would do cookies on, and it comes out fine. So do that. If you happen to have these, it's great. The holes do help to crisp it a little better in the middle, and you can get anything from little itsy bitsy teeny tiny kind of personal pizza type thing going on, all the way up to a good sized big old honking pizza. So whatever you want to do, the sky is the limit. Just enjoy this, and remember, kids love making pizza, so include them. Now, sauce making is really simple when it comes to pizza sauce, folks. Not as hard as spaghetti sauce. And I want to say something. I learned some lessons over many, I would like to say it was only dozens of trials on pizza, but through almost, I would say, easily a couple hundred different versions of pizza, I learned a lesson. And that is, the simpler it is, the better it tastes. So do not overdo this, okay? Don't make it harder than it has to be. Now I'm going to go ahead and just get that wine worked in there. So I'm going to switch to a whisk. They're a little more efficient at this point. I've got some water here. All right, I want about a teaspoon of salt. Get my black pepper down in here. Oh yeah. Now, when it comes to oregano, don't overdo it with oregano, folks. Oregano is very quickly overwhelming to a dish. A teaspoon will do great in a sauce like this. Basil, however, basil's kind of the opposite. It can be used in great measure, so I'm going to be using a couple of tablespoons there. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring it up in temperature, and I'm going to simmer it, but only for maybe 5 to 10 minutes. You don't have to cook this sauce, okay? We're going to evap out some of the alcohol from the wine by doing this, and we're going to just kind of get everything stable, so I'll know exactly how thick it is. If I need to thin it, I can go ahead and do that. And then my sauce is ready at that point. Turn that down to a medium-low and give this a little time. Once it starts bubbling, I'm going to put a lid on it and then just let it simmer, like I said, for 5 to 10 minutes, and no more than that. All right, so I've come to the point where almost everything is done. I've just got to cut my pepperoni. Now I'm going to say this. If you're going to cut your pepperoni the way I'm doing here, you're going to get some greasy fingers, so just be prepared for that, okay? This stuff has got a lot of oil on the outside of it, and of course you've seen pepperoni pizzas before. You know exactly what's going on. So be very careful, gentle, and take your time. There is no rush. I'm tasting my pepperoni. It is delicious. Now, got the sauce all done. This has only been simmering for maybe 6 or 7 minutes now. So I'm just going to let this set aside and cool down. And remember, if I need to thin it anymore, I can. Now I used about 3/4 cup of wine and about 1/2 cup of water. So a total of about, a cup and a quarter of liquid added to the 6 ounces of tomato paste. Pretty easy, huh? Oh, looky there. Our dough has doubled in bulk. All right, let's take a look at this. Now, earlier I mentioned that the reaction between metal and dough versus glass and dough. Now, dough will form air pockets like you see right here around the base of that. Here's some big ones. All right, now if it was metal, these air pockets don't form the same way, and the dough does not rise as well. So yeah, it doesn't affect it, what you rise it in. Now, this, yeah, it's pretty firm. And I'm gonna get a knife, cut it in half. Now you can do this with a regular knife. They make what they call a pastry, or pastry knife, which is looks like a scraper, like a board scraper, and works great when you're working with stuff like this. So if you don't have one of those, you should consider one. Now you'll notice I'm not being any too careful about the shape. Ladies and gentlemen, come on, it's your pizza and you're about to eat it. It doesn't have to be perfectly round. So don't lose your mind to get it that way. For the most part, when you're starting, you can shape it by hand. You can pull it, you can stretch it. After this has had a good hour or so to set up and rise, it does what's called autolyzing. Autolyzing is when the gluten develops in the dough. All right, just that simple, just that easy. Anyway, we'll stop pulling on it. Get some flour up here. Now the flour I just use to keep things from sticking to my my rolling pin, and it helps it to roll out a little smoother and easier. And if you'll notice, I work in a circle. Now, how big to make it? Well, it's simple. I want it bigger than my pan, and it is not quite there just yet. All right, I took just a moment just now to start my oven. I got it preheating to 450 degrees. If you think that's extreme, believe me, it's not. Pizza ovens are freakishly hot, okay? I mean very, very hot. And so by comparison, your home oven isn't going to be very hot. All right. So once you get it on your pan, you can kind of stretch it and pull it in. So if you want to pull it in a spot, stretch it out in another spot, you can do that. And if you just got loose edges and you're worried about it, folks, look, we don't make anything too difficult, okay? So keep it simple and your pizza will come out just fine, all right? This one is looking just a little more round than my first one. All right, now, if you'll notice, my board has been sliding around on me a little bit, so I'm going to show you what to do when you have this little issue going on. Take a cup towel, all right, or just a hand towel. Any kind of towel will do fine. Slide it right up under it, and boom, suddenly it is well anchored, all right? All right, now my oven was just telling me that it has finished preheating. So what I'm going to do is put a ladle of sauce right in the middle of my pizza there. And I think I want just a little bit more, maybe a ladle and a half. All right. So I'm going to say this, when it comes to doing sauce, don't get too sauce crazy, unless you just like a really super saucy pizza. If you like it a super saucy, well, go ahead and make it saucy. But me, I don't like them too wet. I like my pizza to be thin, somewhat cheesy, rather on the, I would say on the dry side as far as pizzas are, compared. And the style that I'm doing is much more akin to the California pizza, okay? The next thing, do not overload pizzas with too much of anything. An overloaded pizza is just usually a wet mess, all right? Don't do that to your pizza. Don't do it to yourself. And when I'm doing two pizzas like this, and I'm dividing the ingredients, what you see going on right now is exactly what I do every time. That way I know I get pretty even coverage on my ingredients. When you're putting your mozzarella down, you should be able to see some of the sauce before it goes in the oven, okay? So like you're seeing there, we've got good coverage. And I want to say this, for a large size pizza, these are 16-inch pizzas, doing an 8-ounce portion of cheese, which is what you're seeing there, is exactly what you want. Now we got just that parm. Now the parm is important. It's a spike in the cheesy sharpness, okay? It adds a little bit of salt to the whole thing and does affect the overall composition of the pizza. You remember when I told you earlier about the pepperoni oil getting on your hands? Yeah, it sure will. So be prepared for that occurrence, okay? All right. 1 pepperoni and 1 cheese pizza. All right, my oven is now at 450 degrees. I'm going to put these in, but one at a time. You can cook them at the same time, but you're going to have one, being on a different rack, one below the other, isn't going to cook at the same rate. And it does seem to mess with the way it cooks on the upper one. So I do one at a time, high temperature. 450 is what I'm cooking at. And the other thing is I'm not going to give you a time, because pizzas cook fairly fast. And the way a pizza is going to cook in my oven at my altitude at 450 is going to be different than the way it's going to cook in yours. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use a count up timer when this goes in the oven. I'll start this. It'll tell us how long it took to get this sucker cooked, because I've never cooked a pizza in this oven at this altitude. We're going to find out now. All right, here we go. Oh yeah. Patience. There we go. Keep an eye on it. You want to check it and make sure that it doesn't burn. So check those edges. You'll see them browning. Lift it with a knife on the edge if you want, or something else like a turner. And that way you can check the bottom to see if it's browning nicely and to see if it's firmed up. Because if it has, the pizza will the whole thing will lift like it's firm. That's the way you know. So this one will go in next as soon as that's done, and we'll take a look at that other one as soon as it comes out. Pizza is looking good. I rotated it. I happen to know, as a matter of fact, that this particular oven does not cook perfectly even. All right, it's a few decades old. Give it a break. All right, so it does what it does, but I've learned if I'm smart, if I want even browning as much as I can get, I have to turn things in there. And that's something you might want to consider. Now, we're 7.5 minutes in right now. It looked like it was about halfway done, so I think we're well underway. Oh, the aroma right now is incredible. And my timer is just now turning about 15 minutes, and I think that this thing is about done. Let's look. Oh, dear me. Now, something I need to check. I need to check the crust for doneness. Oh yeah, I can feel it with the knife. It's firm in the center down there. Perfect. Okay, so this one, in the oven it goes. I know how long it takes to cook it. Okay, now for those of us who have a bit of a problem with nighttime heartburn, you can do this on a fresh pizza, okay? You can take and put a paper towel right over the top of it and sop up some of that excess oil that you got off of that pepperoni, because this was a really greasy pepperoni right here. And frankly, I don't need that much indigestion, all right? So there's your little trick for how to deal with that little problem when you're making your pizza if you have similar issues. The quantity of the ingredients that we use today, well, let's start with the dough. Right here, it's 4½ cups of flour, 1½ cup water, 2 teaspoons of yeast, 2 teaspoons of salt, and anywhere from just a teaspoon or 2 of olive oil up to 2 tablespoons. Now, remember that olive oil will affect the quality of the dough. The crispness of the dough will be affected by that, so minimize it if you want crisper dough. On the pepperoni, just as many slices as you want, of course. To make our sauce, I started with 6 ounces of tomato paste. I added 3/4 of a cup of white Zinfandel wine, 2 tablespoons of basil, 1 teaspoon of oregano, 1.5 teaspoons of black pepper, and about 1 teaspoon of salt. Also enough water to bring it to the consistency that you want yours to be. I like mine to be similar to spaghetti sauce. Our cheese, I started with 1 pound of mozzarella, and down here I had, if I remember right, this was about 4 ounces of Parmesan before I shredded it. So very simple, basic ingredients. All right, I want to be careful with this pan, how I handle it. It's still pretty hot. Take my pizza and just lift the edge and slide it off. That's all I did. Cutting these things. If you've got a pizza cutter, hey, good for you. But guess what, folks? Not all of us have one. So just get you a knife and very gently work your way down through your pizza. Not a hard thing to do. Once you've split it in half, you can then quarter. You hear that crunch? Good crackery crust. That's one of the things that I really look for in a good, pleasant to eat pizza. Some folks want a soft crust, but I like crackery, and that's crackery. Okay, let's enjoy this sucker. Well, there it is. That wasn't such a chore. I'm looking forward to that pizza. Oh, boy, that one's got a few blisters on it. I love pizza blisters. It's like a special treat on a pizza, isn't it? Now, pizza. Beautiful, nice crust. Good thin crust pizza. It'll hold its shape. Oh man, the flavors. That's a good pizza. When you try it, you'll be convinced. It's just not that hard. I've done this for years, and once you've tried it a few times and you've done it and you realize, hey, it's not a lot of work to do pizza. You don't mind. So folks, give it a shot at home. You're gonna like what you get. And you might order out just a little bit less. This is a lot cheaper and way better. Okay, so please check out my description box if you would. Sorry, I think I got pizza sauce. Take a look there. I have a link to my website, my recipes, S.A.Trotter.com. That's where you get that stuff. PDF format on those recipes, and they're really good quality. Also, take a look at my other merch there. And if you would, social media. Join me on Facebook, join me on Twitter. Folks, I'm looking forward to seeing you there and hearing from you. And thank you very much for watching. I'm enjoying my pizza. Hope you enjoy yours. Yeah.